Okay, so this is not going to be a technical academic talk. Going back thousands of years, there's the concept of the social contract. And that's the idea of what's the relationship of we, the populace, with our governmental or political or whatever organizations. And it's the question of the authority and legitimacy and communication and so on and so forth. And so I asked, people were trying to talk to me about the AFRINIC and the APNIC and the so on situation. And I found myself not feeling that I was standing on ground I understood, because I didn't understand the model underneath it. So I thought about this for a while, and I realized that what is the contract that we as the members, we as the operators, and so on and so forth have with the RIR system and with our other internet organizational functions. What do we expect from them? What do they expect for us? And oops, who are we? Okay. Surprise, I know this is different than you're thinking, but RIPE is just not about IP allocation. And it's not because we're running out of it. It's because RIPE was formed for the cooperation of running the European, coordinating the running of the European internet. Okay, and here are our founders. Oops. Okay, and Daniel's still here with us. I'm not sure who else is. I don't think so. But this is from the founding document, RIPE 001. Okay, you do not see allocation there. Okay, the objective is to ensure administrative and technical coordination between the operators who are actually running the network. And the basic concept under this is that we all feel the same, and I'm going to use the word physics. We are all conscious of the speed of light. We are all conscious of the power our devices are consuming, or more becoming that, right? We are conscious of allocating resources, of coordinating between us, of keeping traffic local, etc. Okay, so how do we coordinate this? Okay, so RIPE is the forum for the exchange, and it's promoting the coordination and the agreements and the services. Okay, nowheres in RIPE 1 is IP allocation mentioned. And what it really was is that it set up the NCC as the secretariat of the community. The NCC is part of the community, but it is the community operational function. They don't operate the network, they operate the agreements. Okay? And what this talk isn't about the bureaucracy. It isn't about ICP2, and that's the document that says how registries are created. And it's not that that's not important, it's that these are the thoughts that occurred to me as I wanted to think about these things and what I had to put under it. Okay? So, the bureaucratic contract should derive from and be based on the social contract. So I wanted to first understand the social contract. And that's what this talk is about. And what do we expect from the RIR system? But who are we? And it's not just us geeks or us sellers of IP address space, or even our direct customers and users. It's civil society, the governments, and our great-grandchildren, if the climate doesn't wipe them out. Okay, so there's a basic, in the late 80s, I think, or about 1990, I saw on the side of a bus, www.foo.com, and I said, uh-oh, we're in trouble. They have found us. And in the long run, they're going to want a stake. And the internet has become critical infrastructure. The government and civil society will play more and more of a role. And they have to, because what we have built is critical. Okay? And they are justifiably worried, and they are responsible. Right? Routing security isn't just an interesting thing for silly people like me, right? Your government is scared as hell, and they are right to be. But just as we formed the RIPE community because we felt of common physics, and we perceived the same technical and operational problems in the network, and we have a common goal, those packets have to move. Okay? The BGP has to work all the way from well, maybe not Los Angeles, from San Francisco to Moscow, right? Just as that has to work, we have common goals, common language, common understanding. Our governments don't. Our governments, damn them, are at high tension with each other. So government is not monolithic, right? It's a bit more better here where you have cooperation of many national governments. The rest of the world tends not to be this way. So when we talk about dealing with the government, and it's not dealing in an adversarial role, we are responsible for understanding their perception of need, educating them as to what is technically achievable. And the problem is that there is no government we can talk to. Each of us have our own, well, not this many governments, but close. We each have to go home and help our governments, okay? And it's going to get more and more serious. The governments have a role to play. And instead of it's us and them, it's we're in this together. We are one humanity. And so see John Curran's NANOG keynote talk on internet governance, okay? But what are the attributes I want to discuss that we as the community want from just our own level, from RIPE and from the RIRs? And I'm going to discuss these various pieces a little more quickly, I hope. Okay, we want fairness and openness. Okay, RIPE is pretty good, but Aaron has been very bad and is improving. When I first looked at these numbers like 10 years ago, Aaron had 17% of the resource holders were members. 17%. That's horrifying. Okay, they're now 40% and 60%, 7% of the address space. And what happened is an adversarial lawyer, right? What we call in American litigators, the people who go to court and fight with the lawyer they had instead of problem-solving lawyers, right? There are two flavors of lawyers. Somewhere in this room, I think, is Athena, and she is a problem, and her team are problem-solving lawyers. Listen to them, okay? So until very recently, AP Nick, and I have conflicting input on this, is actually not a really open membership organization. Okay, we want transparent. Pardon?
I am a man.
Yes. Well, we won't ask you to prove it here. We want transparency, both in terms of finance, in terms of policy, and in terms of decision making. Okay? We want civility. Believe it or not, I'm a known troublemaker, so to try to keep me from making trouble, they put me on this code of conduct committee. So I have to try to be civil. And it's how we treat each other and how we treat others outside. So we kind of expect nowadays, it's modern, but 5 years ago, and even just a few years ago, the idea of a code of conduct and how we deal with it was socially difficult in our culture. And still people today worry about that it's the thought police. And I assure you, as somebody working inside the committee, it's not. We'd rather not have any issues and not do anything. So be nice out there so we don't have to. We're lazy. Help us. Okay? We want diversity. Gender, race, religion, et cetera, et cetera. But I want diversity of opinion. We don't have to agree. We have to discuss civilly. But we don't have to agree. If we all agreed, it would be very boring. We could do it with computers, right? So the thing is to be constructive. Okay, we want representation. But, and this word stakeholders has turned funny on us, at the people playing at layer 10. But operators, have the different flavors, academic versus commercial, the education sector, the government, the users, civil society, all these things should be represented well in our culture. Okay? We expect competence. We want, especially the pressures on the NCC, to operate efficiently, correctly. One of the hot buttons for me, and I've spoken about this for over 20 years, is inter-RIR, interoperability, right? Why do the 5 RIRs, if you're a big network, you have to deal differently with each one, right? And then this last item, to me, is just a hot button and a joke. Why do I need a course to use the RIR's product? If I were a commercial service, if I had to give a course in how to buy and use my product, I wouldn't be in business very long, right? A monopoly has the luxury of being confusing, but maybe some efficiency could be gained by making it a little easier to use, okay? We want the governance to be representative of us, but not just the meetings and the general thingy, you know, to be able to go to the membership meeting and vote and stuff like that, but across the boards and committees, right? This is part of the transparency thing that I want to, I'm on the code of conduct team. If you have input to how we're perceived, how we should be organized, and how we should act, please tell us. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Okay? So, we as a community, and we expect of the RIR to act in a social responsible fashion, right? And this, I think, is being perceived more and more than it was 20 years ago. And this is good. Okay, we just had a talk on sustainability. Decolonialization is a hot button of mine, but ethics and justice are also important. Okay, we have a community that feels a common physics, as I said. We are the stewards of a critical resource. We have different subcultures. We have the DNS cabal. We have the BGP people. We have, hey, I confess. We have the security peoples, which I also confess, etc. But there's a Venn diagram of this, and at the operational level, we're cooperative. But this weird incident happened 20-something years ago at ICANN, is when it was founded, it was driven by adversarial lawyers. And so it is, in its cultural base, competition and conflict between the different constituencies. This is badly broken. We should not fall into that trap here, right? We are all dealing with the same common physics. We're all responsible for running a service and an internet for the world. And we have to cooperate to do it, not because we're forced to, though there is the force, but because we perceive a common problem and a common physics, and we cooperate every day to make it work. Okay? I want the RIRs to also be capture resistant, and we've had some failures. And you know, Afrinic's notorious and unfortunate, but just as an example, Aaron was, again, had an adversarial lawyer at its founding and had barriers placed. In Aaron, you couldn't run for board election unless the nominating committee approved you, and they didn't approve everybody. There was 3 or 4 years in Aaron where unless you were Canadian and liked poutine, you couldn't get on the board. Okay? And AP Nick has had its problems. Afrinic, of course, is notorious, so we know it. But so when we think of the RIPE NCC Executive Committee, we should think of having it be diverse, having it be representative, and be capture resistant. Okay, we do this survey every year or two. I don't know why. Somewhere's, probably as a child, I was taught to hate surveys. But how we evaluate and look at ourselves and how we hold up a mirror to ourselves, I think is important. And maybe we can be a little more creative in that area. We do think the community should be nonprofit and financially transparent. Okay, we should be prudent and not fancy. Maybe we should stop holding the dinners at castles, right? Maybe we don't need so much marketing literature to sell us on the NCC. I mean, it is a monopoly. They don't have to market to us. We don't have a choice but to use them. So when we sit here and we complain about how expensive it is and, oh, the fee structure and all that, well, maybe we should ask for less fancy. Maybe we shouldn't ask for all the free booze. Maybe we shouldn't ask for castles. Okay? But we should ask for coffee, okay? Right, and maybe we need a coffee task force or, something to have stability in this area. And I'm sure you have some other feelings and ideas too, and I'd be interested in hearing them, and so would other people here, especially people like my friend Miriam. But let's not reinvent the wheel and discuss the same thing again, and let's not empire build, gatekeep, and all these nasty things. So what do you do if you care about this stuff? Okay, who do you call? This is one forum, the RIRs, the ASO, which is likely to be drafting a new policy, okay? And I will confess that I believe that when I talked about dealing with the governments, we have had for years some people who are in our governments within the RIPE community. We should be using them to deal with this stuff. They are actually, I move packets, they move policy, strategy, etc. Okay, so I nominated a government person for the ASO election because that's how I felt.